The San Antonio Spurs' three-game winning streak was snapped on Wednesday by the Portland Trail Blazers as the Blazers defeated the Spurs in San Antonio by 16 points. What's up, everyone? This is Paul Garcia, Project Spurs. Let's go through a quick recap of this game for the Spurs. Their, I believe, 28th game of the season. All right, so let's go to show the notes real quick. All right, so what was the scenario for the Spurs? Before tip-off, three main players were out of the lineup. Jakob Poeltl was still on the injured list. Zach Collins was out for this game with an injury, and then also Romeo Langford. And then the Blazers were favored by 7.5. So one thing we want to note about the injuries there is that Jakob and Zach, the Spurs' starting center and their backup center, were both out for this game. And so the Blazers took advantage, as you're going to see here when we look at some of the paint stats for Portland. All right, so this game was pretty comfortable for Portland for most of the night, except for the third quarter. The Spurs actually brought that lead down to 4 points, but then Portland responded and they had all the answers. Let's go through this recap. So the first 6 minutes, it's a close game. The Blazers are only up by 4 points. Bates-Diop has 8 points at this point, so he was off to an early start for the Spurs. Charles Bassey got to start at the 5 against Yusuf Nurkic, but he had some difficulty early on, and so he had to lead the game early with foul trouble, and so then that brought in the Spurs' like third or fourth center in the rotation. That's Gorgui Dieng. So Gorgui Dieng got some early minutes and played a lot in this game. By the end of the first quarter, the Blazers are up to 11 points. They're leading by 11 points, and Dame Lillard has 12 points by this point because he's going to end up having a really good night. Doug McDermott was pretty strong off the bench for San Antonio in the first quarter with 8 points off the bench. Second quarter comes, and midway through, the Blazers already started to go up. They go up by 19 within the first 6 minutes of the second quarter. They're up by 16 by the midway point. Dame is now up to 16 points by this point, and Portland is they're continuing to win the 3-point line. That was a big gap for them, was that 3-point shooting. When halftime comes, the Blazers still hold that 16-point lead. Dame's up to 22 points. So for the Blazers, also Anthony Simons has 15 points at this point, and so does Jeremy Grant. He has 14 points. So again, all three of the Blazers' three best players are having a great night against San Antonio's defense by the midway point. Then the third quarter comes, and by midway of the third, the Blazers are still holding on to a 14-point lead. Dame's up to 29 points. Keldon Johnson's having a good night at this point. He has 17 points, 16 in the paint, and we're going to talk about his scoring here in a little bit as we break down this game a little bit further. And then here's where the Spurs really had a chance to make this try to break that streak of losing all these games when they fall behind by double digits. In those last 6 minutes of the third quarter, the Spurs got the Blazers lead all the way down to 4 points. And then they just couldn't, get over the hump there. And so Portland ends up finding some answers, and they end the third quarter up by 8 points. Then the fourth quarter comes, and the Blazers start off with a really good run. And so they end up, going up by 12 midway. And then by the end of the night, Coach Pop and Coach Billups they end up pulling all their starters. And so the end of the bench players play for both teams, and Portland ends up winning by 16 points overall. So again, the Spurs had a chance there in that third quarter, but then they just couldn't sustain it for this game. All right, so who are your leading scorers for both teams? For the Spurs was Keldon Johnson. Continues to have really efficient nights when he's attacking the paint mainly. That's what he's doing here. So he had 18 paint points. I do want to note that. So I went back and looked through all of his game logs, and he's now on a streak of scoring in 6 straight games. He has 10 or more paint points. He has only done that 2 games in a row before this time frame. So what's important there is that Keldon, said so. He told the media that he's going to make it because, he didn't necessarily say that because of his 3-point shot, but he's going to make it an emphasis to score inside out first. So again, he's going to continue to attack inside. And basically, like at this point, like if there's a 3 late in the shot clock open for him, like he took a good open corner 3 in this game and he made it, that's when he's going to be taking 3 balls. So he's not really as going to the 3-point line as much anymore. Now he's mainly just attacking. And we see that again, 6 games in a row now where he scored 10 or more paint points. If you listen to the Spurs cast, I will be recording an episode on Thursday with Josh Paredes of Air Alamo, and in that I'm going to do a deep dive on Keldon's his shot selection, how he's kind of changed it now that he's kind of making himself more aggressive, attacking first rather than going to the outside. So I'll have some numbers in there, and really I'm really interested. I haven't done the research yet, but I'm really interested to see what did Keldon's shot profile look like before all these more aggressive different shot formats of attacking the paint to prior, when he used to mainly just shoot threes first and then go inside. So I'm really interested to see what that looks like. Doug McDermott off the bench with 14 points, 9 points with a 3-point line for Doug. Devin Vassell, he had a difficult night shooting the ball tonight with just 13 points, and he also had 6 points from 3. Keita Bates-Diop, 13 points on an 8 points in the paint, and he had a good efficient night scoring the ball. Josh Richardson got to start there with 11 points, and then Trey Jones 10 points, but he also had a tough night shooting the ball. For the Spurs, the main area where they won was the mid range. But again, when Portland's winning all the other areas, that's not a thing. That's not an area of the floor that you want to win. For the Blazers, they had multiple players have a great night, especially Dame Lillard. He ends up with 37 points in the night. He makes 7 threes, 12 paint points. I mean, just getting layup after layup whenever he got into the paint. Anthony Simons had a good night for Portland, 23 points, 15 points from the outside. Jeremy Grant also a good night, 18 points, 10 points inside, 6 points outside. Yusuf Nurkic in this, he really took advantage of the Spurs not having their two main bigs, and so he ends up with 15 points, 10 in the paint. Shaedon Sharp off the bench there with 12 points. And as you can see there, the biggest gap for Portland in this game was the three-point shooting. They outscored the Spurs 54-33 by 21 points by the three-point line, and that really is a huge margin of why they won this game. All right, when we look at your shot location stats, so the Spurs had been having really good nights defensively during this 3-game win streak, and that ended here against this Portland offense. That's a very dynamic offense. The Blazers make 82% of their paint shots. That is an opponent season high against the Spurs' defense. Now, we do want to note, of course, that both Zach Collins, who's their backup center, and was their starting center when Jakob's out, was out, and so was Jakob Poeltl. So again, when you're missing your two best bigs as far as your fives for the Spurs, that's going to end up happening. The defense is going to get, the offense on the other end is going to get whatever they want inside the paint. And so the Blazers do end up with 82% shooting, which is an opponent season high in the paint. They also shoot well from the three-point line, 45%. They made all their threes. And then let's see what else. When we look at like paint threes and free throws, the Blazers won that battle 122-100 against the Spurs. For the Spurs, they had a good night shooting the ball from three. I mean, this is one of those few nights, but again, their volume has gone down. Now that Keldon's mainly attacking inside, he used to be like their leading three-point taker. And so when he's more so focused on scoring inside, well, then that means only they're relying on Devin, Doug, and Josh Richardson to make up for a lot of their threes. And so you see there that their three-point volume has really started to go down in these last few games now that Keldon's kind of changed his shooting profile. And so those kind of some of the stats stick out. One thing that we do want to note is the Spurs had 18 fast break points and 23 points off turnovers. All right, who are your three standout players for San Antonio in this loss? Keldon Johnson was the top player here for San Antonio. He had a great night. 33 minutes. He scores 25 points on just 16 shots. Way more efficient now that he's just attacking inside mainly. 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 turnover, one foul. Keita Bates-Diop, he got the starting spot there at the 4 after he's been on the injured list for multiple games. He ends up playing 24 minutes, scores 13 points on just 6 shots, also very efficient. He takes a lot of his shots inside. He collects 4 rebounds and 2 fouls. And he has 2 steals and one turnover. And then Trey Jones, 25 minutes. He starts at the point. He ends up with 10 points on 11 shots. So not a great night shooting the ball for him. 4 rebounds, 6 assists. Again, the leader there in the assist column for San Antonio, and then just one personal foul. And again, no turnovers for Trey. So again, those are your 3 standout players for San Antonio. On the offensive end, again, this is looking at the Spurs' numbers compared to their other 27 games prior, and so we're trying to see what sticks out, in a good way and a bad way. So they had a pretty good night offensively, but the main area that they did a really good job of on offense was taking care of the ball. They only had 11 turnovers against Portland. The not so good area, there was multiple of them. They're now 1-15 when losing the 3-point line. So we noted how they lost the 3-point line by 21 points. That's a huge marker for them. They need to be competitive there at the 3-point line. If not, they're going to really struggle, as the data shows. They actually struggle when trying to finish inside against Portland. They only made 51% of their paint shots. So again, you want to give a big Yusuf Nurkic some credit down there in the paint. The Spurs, when they did get to the free throw line, they struggled. They only made 58% of their free throws. That was an area where they could have put some more points on the board had they made their free throws. Their ball movement really isn't happening as much anymore. So they only ended up with 51% assist percentage. That's usually about 72% for the team. And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, their shot volume from 3 has gone down, and that's going to be tough to win that 3-point battle or match your opponent when you're not even taking as many threes as them. On the defensive end, let's see. Let's go to the good first. So the Blazers made just 12 free throws. So that's one area that was a low number for Portland. 53% of the Blazers turnovers were due to Spurs steals. So the Spurs had 9 steals on the night, and again, they caused 53% of Portland's turnovers due to those steals. And the Spurs, when they did make Portland turn the ball over, they scored on the other end very well with 23 points off turnovers. What are the not so good stats on defense for this team? They are now 0-17 when trailing by double digits. So that was something that we do want to talk about here. So during this 3-game win streak, they never fell behind by double digits, because this team is showing that once they go down by 10 or more, they have a tough time, sustaining that energy to make the comeback, but then also having to, hold the lead or build a lead. And so we saw that tonight was a perfect example. They get the Portland lead all the way down to 4 points in the third quarter, And then, they either just like run out of gas or Portland just has way more answers. And so again, when you're having to battle back from down 19, that's a tough thing that you're asking this young ball club to do. And so the Spurs, it's actually, why am I saying it's the Spurs? They weren't ready for that. And so it's continuing to show that when they go down by 10 or more points this season, they are 0-17. So they're continuing to try to break that streak so far this season. The Blazers, like I mentioned, had a great night from three against the Spurs' defense, 54 points. They shoot 45%. And then that 82% paint accuracy, which is opponent season high. And then the Blazers, of course, score 128 points, which is 8 more than the Spurs usually allow to their opponents. So those were the not so good things on defense. All right, so where are the Spurs through 28 games? They are now 9-19 overall. They have dropped down from 14th to 15th out west, as I last checked the standings. They have they used to have the 5th worst record. Now it's the 4th worst record. So again, if you're watching the lottery there, that's where they stand right now. At home, they're 5-11 at home. And unlike the East, where they were like 6-2 against the Eastern Conference, they really struggle against the Western Conference, the Spurs. They're now 3-17 against the Western Conference this season. All right, so what is the final game for this week? The Spurs are going on the road. Technically, it's a home game for them, but they're going down south to Mexico City, Mexico. They will be playing the Miami Heat, who they just played the previous Saturday. The Heat are 14-15 at the moment, and they have moved up. They've actually improved to 8th in the East. So that game will take place on Saturday. We'll see who will be available for San Antonio, knowing that Pirtle, Zach Collins, and Romeo Langford were all out in the most recent game. So for Project Spurs, I am Paul Garcia. Have a great evening.